The Dead Sea Scrolls are the books written by Jewish mystics who called themselves the Essenes. These were individuals who claimed they were living with angels and had received teachings about human transformation into celestial beings. Their texts were stashed away when Rome invaded Palestine in 70 AD, hidden away in caves, and they were discovered surreptitiously in 1947 and caused a worldwide sensation upon their discovery. They are essentially Gnostic in nature because the Essenes themselves were Gnostics. They were interested in self-realization and the perfection of the human body, the transformation of the body into a celestial form or a light body form. The Dead Sea Scrolls are not labeled Gnostic texts as are the Nag Hammadi library, but the core of them, the heart of them, is Gnostic in nature. When we read the Dead Sea Scrolls, it becomes very clear that the Essenes, these Jewish mystics, Gnostic mystics, were having close encounters of the first, second, third, and fourth kind. They said they were seeing angels. They were seeing things in the sky. Portals were opening in the sky. But beyond that, they also had close encounters of the fifth, sixth, seventh, and eighth kind. The close encounter of the eighth kind is human transformation into a celestial being. The Dead Sea Scrolls clearly describes humans being taken, possibly abducted in a modern conversation, but they didn't think of it as abduction then. They're taken into the celestial realms and transformed into an extraterrestrial or celestial being by angels who themselves were extraterrestrials. So the Dead Sea Scrolls are actually a first moment of disclosure, is what they are. This is very important because when they were discovered in 1947, there was a parallel event, the Roswell crash, when for the first time in modern history, following shortly on Kenneth Arnold's sighting of a squadron of flying discs, that mass consciousness began to think about the possibility of extraterrestrial visitors vis-a-vis the Roswell crash. So it's very powerful confluence there, or synchronicity, that the Dead Sea Scrolls come out of the ground at the very same time that a celestial disk crashes into the ground in Roswell, and now we have this mixture happening. It's like, okay, how do these two things relate? Is it possible that some of the entities that are described in the Gnostic text, the archons, for example, match up with the entities, the alleged entities that were found in the crash disk at Roswell? When the Essenes are talking about dealing with extraterrestrial beings, are these angels, or are these somehow some other kind of celestial or extraterrestrial races? Very important, very powerful questions.
And there's one interesting survey done by Helen Wambach. She surveyed her hypnotic regression subjects, about several hundred of them, and said, did you want to come back after the between lives? Did you want to come back to Earth? 2/3 said, no way, I didn't want to come back here. and we see that in the near-death studies too. Dr. Long has pointed that out too, that even before they go, even when they're going to come back, they say, I don't want to come back here. So that just shows that there's sort of a problem in this process. I like to contrast those studies and this information about the reluctance today of people who have these experiences and the reluctance then to come back to Earth to show why these philosophies may have arisen, like with Buddhism and all that. Why, yeah, you shouldn't have to come back. But then the modern studies then show this very powerful persuasion process to get people to come back. Like, oh, you have a mission, you have something you need to learn, and then people kind of go, okay, I'll go back then. It's sort of the attitude. But like I said, human life can be good. It's just, if the conditions were improved, human life can be fun. There's so much evidence right now, I think, in near-death studies, in the between lives studies, reincarnation studies, good serious work by real professional people doing it. I think it's just inescapable to conclude that, yeah, the consciousness is separate from the body, that the body relies on this separate consciousness. People call it a spirit, a soul, whatever you want to call it. So the ancient Greeks, they started to develop a philosophy that the body became a prison for the soul. And that became then the Gnostic idea that grew out of some of this Greek philosophy and became a very popular idea even with the early Christians. It doesn't need to be a prison for the soul. It's just the way it got manipulated into perhaps this between lives amnesia, where we forget, where we can't really remember anymore that we are really a consciousness that has this longer continuum, then maybe it becomes a prison. But if we start having those memories, if we start realizing, hey, this can just be a playground, I think it has the capacity to be a playground for the soul, using the bodies and doing all these things and having all these experiences. So it just depends on what is made of Earth experience as to whether it's a prison or whether it's a little toy that we can play with.